Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections along with the daily mains answer writing program. In the analysis part, we'll first have a comprehensive discussion with respect to the declining influence of Maoist movement in the country and how India can sustain the security gains made in the last few years. Then in the second article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the India-Oman trade deal and how India can use it in its overall West Asia strategy. Then in the simplified section, we'll have a look at 5 different articles from a special perspective of UPSC Prelims 2026 along with the value addition. So stay tuned. Coming to the very first topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to the declining influence of Maoist movement in the country. Around a decade ago, somewhere around 2013-14, the influence of Naxalites or the Naxal movement was present in more than 100 districts of the country. And what these people did was that they carried on targeted killings. Targeted killings with respect to the security personnel or even those locals who were perceived to be seen as supporting the state. And because of this was once described as, the issue of Naxalism was once described as the single biggest threat to the security of the country. So the government came up with a two-pronged approach where it on one hand focus upon the security measures and on the other focus upon the developmental measures, and we'll talk about it. Because of this, what we have seen is that there has been significant reduction in the number of these instances. A lot of the leaders of the Naxal movement in India have been eliminated, and the overall development with respect to these areas where these people previously formed a kind of their own governance structure known as Janatana Sarkars, they have been rooted out. And now what we are seeing is that the welfare delivery system of the government is now being disbursed in these areas. But the question remains that it's okay, it's really good that we have reduced to a significant level, but how to sustain the gains, or to be precise, how to sustain the security gains which we have made in the last few years? That's the very important question. So what we'll do today is we'll first talk about this particular ideology from where it originated. We'll talk about the Communist Party of India, its evolution in Indian scenario. And then what we'll talk about is that what were primarily the reasons which were responsible for this movement, Naxal movement in the country. What steps have been taken by the government, especially in the last few years. And what should be the way forward to sustain the security gains which we have made. Again, a very important topic of internal security with respect to GS3. Now, let's talk about the ideology of Maoism. Now, the word Maoism is derived from the personality Mao Zedong, the leader who led the Chinese Communist Revolution in 1949. Now, what you have to understand is that the primary source of inspiration with respect to Mao Zedong were the kind of things which were happening in the Soviet Union. So he was inspired by the Marxism, Leninism which was followed over there. But you'll have to understand, the ideology or the principles which are enshrined in Marxism, Leninism, they basically advocate for a peaceful transition to socialism with the help of proletariats, the industrial workers. But the conditions in China were quite different. China at that time was a peasant-led society. And Mao Zedong adopted the core principles of Marxism, Leninism and added few of his own principles, where he focused upon the violent means of action, because it was primarily a different society. In Soviet Union, we primarily had the industrial workers, but in China, we had the peasant. So what he did was a kind of an agrarian movement, which was supported by the peasants, and it was a violent struggle against the elites, right? So he emphasized upon the agrarian, peasant-led violent revolution. I hope it is clear. Now, see, why, and he often used to say that the power flows through the barrel of the gun. He said that if we really have to convert the whole society into a communist society, we'll have to go with the violent means of action. Now, what are the core features of this particular ideology of Maoism? The very first is class struggle. What you'll have to understand is, according to Maoism, that there are divisions in the society in the form of classes. And you have one particular class, which is the class of elites, which has control over the means of production. And because of that, it is this particular class which has led to a lot of atrocities committed against the class which is that of the peasants or the industrial workers. So there has to be a class struggle. What Mao said, that we'll have to eliminate these elites, right? What he said was that they are the agents of the state. These capitalists, these elites are the agent of the states. Then we have protracted people's war. According to Mao Zedong, this struggle is going to be a long struggle. It's not going to be something that you start today and you end it tomorrow. It's going to be a protracted struggle. People will have to imbibe the philosophy and the principles in their mind. So it's going to be a long struggle. Then armed struggle. We will not go with peaceful methods of revolution. Rather, we will go with the violent means of revolution, where there would be bloodshed. And these capitalists, these elites would be eliminated. And then it would lead to a stateless society. Please understand, for communists, what they believe in is a stateless society, where people have the ultimate power. And therefore, what Mao Zedong said, that we'll pursue an armed struggle, we'll eliminate these elites, and then we'll reach to a stateless society. Then, rejection of parliamentary democracy. See, right now in India, we have a particular party, Communist Party of India, Marxist, which follows parliamentary methods of winning the election, constitutional means. But what Mao Zedong said, that we are not going to follow this particular method. Rather, we'll go for a violent struggle to acquire power. As I said, that for him, it was always like that power flows through the barrel of the gun. I hope it is clear. Now, in India, what you'll have to understand, let's talk about how things have evolved with respect to communism in India, especially in the context of Communist Party. So let me give you a chronological background. It was way back in the year 1925, pre-independence, that we had the inception of Communist Party of India. We had leaders like M.N. Roy. Post-independent, see, as I already told you in the beginning, that for every communist, they want a stateless society. They don't believe in the conception of state. So post-independence, there was a question in front of these leaders, that should we adopt the parliamentary principles of peaceful method of transition, or should we basically adopt the violent struggles? But during that time, one particular incident happened, and that was from the year 1946 till the year 1951. You must have heard about the peasant struggle in Telangana. Now, there were many peasants who were suffering in Telangana. And many of the leaders of the Communist Party of India supported those peasants. And the state, it suppressed these peasants. So in a way, the Communist Party of India was against the state. So there was once again this question, that should we believe in a kind of an ideology where we adopt the parliamentary means, the constitutional means, or should we adopt the violent means? But in the year 1957, something happened. There was a formation of the first communist government in the state of Kerala, led by the Chief Minister, E.M.S. Namboodiripad. Now, see, this gave a ray of hope to the communists in India, that we also can have a kind of a democratic membership or presence in the country if we follow the democratic principles. We also can do that. But then in 1960, you must have heard about the Soviet-Sino split. The split between Russia, the erstwhile USSR, and China. There was some ideological difference. And that was reflected in the kind of policies which were adopted by the Communist Party of India in India. See, as I said, the erstwhile USSR, over there, the communists believed in a peaceful transition to socialism, whereas Mao Zedong believed in a violent struggle. So there were factions which started to develop in the Communist Party of India. Some of them supported the erstwhile USSR. Some of them supported the ideological basis of Mao Zedong. Then in 1962, we had the India-China war. And you must be surprised that many of the leaders of the Communist Party, they actually supported China in this particular war. Right? See, what you'll have to see is that from the beginning itself, these communists did not have good relations with the state. Right? When I'm referring to the states, I don't mean the state of Uttar Pradesh or something. I'm talking about the overall conception of the state. Right? So they never believed in the government. And it is because of that that they always had a kind of an antagonism towards the democratic structure. And it was in 1967 that there was a split. split. So we had the original party, Communist Party of India, Marxist, and there was a split and there was a formation of CPI, Marxist-Leninist, led by Charu Majumdar and Kanu Sanyal and other leaders also. So these were the radicals. They did not believe in peaceful methods. What they believed in was that we'll have to adopt violent means of actions if we have to realize our vision, our objectives. I hope it is clear, right? So there was this particular split. And then there was the incident of Naxalbari. In Naxalbari, what really happened was that there were some peasants and they were oppressed. They were being oppressed by the landlords. So over there, we had these radical members of the Communist Party. They went and supported these peasants and they rooted out these landlords. They seized the arms and ammunitions. That was the beginning of this blood revolution, right? And then it spread to different areas in the country, right? There were different factions which developed. For example, the People War Group, one of the factions. So from 1970s onwards till the early 2000s, there were numerous factions, the radical factions which developed in the state of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, some parts of the interiors of Maharashtra, right? Or the Maoist Coordination Committee. So finally, what happened was in 2004, there was a union of People's War Group, Maoist Coordination Committee and CPI-ML. And then they formed, these three entities together formed the CPI-Maoist. Please understand that this particular political party, which they called themselves as a party, this party does not accept the democratic means of transition, the peaceful methods of parliamentary governance. And therefore, this particular organization was declared as a terrorist organization under the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. I hope the chronology is clear. It's very important to understand that how things have evolved, right? So, as I already told, the Maoist insurgency started from the Naxalbari village, where you had the peasants and you had these radical leaders of the Communist Party supporting those peasants. And there was a violent struggle. These landlords were rooted. And then it also led to a lot of deaths in this particular region. And then it later came to be known as the left-wing extremism. They believe in overthrowing the Indian state and forming the people's government. What they say is that we don't believe in your conception of state or your government. We'll have our own structure, what they call as Janatana Sarkars. Janatana Sarkars, our own government. So that was a direct challenge to the conception of the very state. As I told, there was a formation of CPI Maoist in 2004 where a lot of different factions, People's War Group, Maoist Coordination Committee and CPI-ML, they combined and joined the CPI Maoist. And it is active in the parts of central and eastern India, in the states like Odisha. Now, significantly, the numbers has reduced. Numbers of district which has the influence of this particular ideology has significantly reduced, which you'll have to understand. Now, what is CPIM? CPI Marxist. So as I told, in 67, there was a split. Sorry, in 64, there was a split. So you had the main party CPI Marxist. Out of that, some of the radicals came out, forming the CPI-ML, Marxist-Leninist, led by Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal. Now, CPI Marxist believes in democratic means of coming to power, the peaceful methods. They believe in constitutional principles. And what they say is that we will achieve the objective of communism through the constitutional means. So it is a party which is registered under the Representation of People's Act. Right? It does not believe in violent methods. And again, it follows the principles of parliamentary democracy. But on the other hand, we have the CPI Maoist, which is a banned, a terrorist organization under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. I hope it is clear. Now, see, as I told, that the influence of Maoist movement in the country has significantly reduced. And we will see it. In 2013, look at the number of left-wing extremism affected districts. Please note, it is primarily in the eastern part and central part. We have the states like Odisha, Jharkhand. We have some parts of West Bengal. We have the interiors of Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, the most backward part of the country. And we'll also see, we'll try to correlate the backwardness with respect to the presence of Maoist movement in the country. But it has significantly reduced. If you look at the numbers with respect to 2025, you'll see that it has reduced from 182 to almost 18 districts and even lesser now. primarily because of the two-pronged approach of the government. One is with respect to the security measures, we'll talk about that. The other is with respect to that of the developmental measures. I hope it is clear, right? Now, what were primarily the reasons for the rise of Naxalism in the country? As I told you, the Naxal Bari incident of 1967, it was primarily the triggering factor. It led to, it was the inception of the violent struggle in the country. Previously, there were some small incidents which took place, but this was the incident which basically led to a violent movement in the country. It was the inspiration for many of those people who had a kind of a basis in this ideology of Mao Zedong, right? So that was the triggering factor, and later it spread to different areas. Different factions emerged in the states like Andhra, right? Or in Odisha or in Chhattisgarh, right? But what were the common factors or the reasons which were primarily responsible? The reasons which led to the slow development of an acrimony, of antagonism towards the state. The very first is historical and structural factors. See, in the times of the British, we had land revenue system. In the colonial times, we had the land revenue system in the form of the zamindari or the permanent settlement. These systems were, in a way, they were quite biased and discriminatory with respect to these tribals. And they basically exploited these tribals. They tried to take out as much as possible from these people. And therefore, there was a development of acrimony, of anger against the state, right? So I'm talking about the pre-independence, the times of the British, the colonial legacy. Then unfinished land reforms post-independence. Initially, they had issues with the Britishers. But then post-independence, we had a lot of political leaders who promised that we'll go with land redistribution policy or the land ceiling. But this did not happen. There were no effective measures which were taken with respect to redistributing the land from those people who had surplus of the land to those of the people who had nothing. There was no implementation or no effective implementation of land ceiling, that a person can only hold this much amount of land, except in few states like West Bengal and Kerala, where you had the communist influence. Overall, there was no effective implementation of these policies. Alienation of tribal communities. From the very start, in fact, from the British times, what we have seen is that these tribals have been alienated. They were seen as substandard citizens, not even citizens. They were seen as those people who are backward, living in the forest areas. And because of the needs of development, see, we gained independence and it was really important for India to pursue developmental politics. And therefore, we had to encroach these forest areas. And because of that, the land rights, the forest rights of these people were compromised. I hope it is clear. Then the socio-economic inequalities. If you look at this particular map, you will see that even till this day, this area remains the most backward part of the country. This is heavily forested. There are a lot of tribals, for example, Gonds, living in this particular area. And the human development indicators in these areas, they're still not good. And because of that, there is a kind of an antagonism, a sense of discontent, disgruntlement, which has developed in the people, right? Poverty and deprivation in the tribal belts. And that is one of the root causes of acquiring the violent means, right? Inequitable development. From 1990s especially, what you'll see is that we adopted the LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, globalization. We had very good rates of economic growth. But did this particular economic growth go into these areas? Like, did we have any kind of benefit in this particular areas? The answer is no. The LPG reforms or the economic growth, it actually bypassed these areas. People were not able, the people living in these areas on the eastern belts, they were not able to reap the benefits of the development, right? Then we have the exploitation by the landlords and contractors, especially after the commodification of the land. See, in the British times, previously, before the Britishers, land was not a commodity, but it was the Britishers who made land as a commodity, which can be transacted among people. And because of that, what happened, especially after the LPG reforms of 1990s, since we had a very good economic growth rate, we needed more of resources in the form of steel, aluminium, or coal. And therefore, the government had to encroach in these forest areas. And a lot of rights, the land rights, the rights over the minor forest produce, in real terms, they did not get access to these rights. And again, it was a development of discontent. Then governance deficit. See, first of all, there were no effective policies for the development of these people. And even if you had some or the other policies, we already have policies in the form of the Prevention of Atrocities Act, right? Or for example, in the form of in 2006, we had the rights of the forest dwellers and the STs, right? But the question remains that have we seen a robust implementation of these laws? Do people in these belts have really got the rights, the individual rights or the community rights over the forest or the land? The answer is a plain no. Because of the governance deficit, the people, the local leaders or the local officials in these areas, they have a kind of a nexus. And whatever the benefits, I'm not saying it happens every time or in every case, but whatever benefits come from the upper level of the government to these lower level, ultimately what we find is that a lot of the resources are siphoned off and people don't get the benefit at the ground level, right? There's a corruption which is involved. There's weak presence of the state, especially in the remote areas. There are issues with respect to communication. There is weak policing. Policing is absent, right? In many of the cases, what we have seen, that police, what we see is that they're the person who have to ideally protect the people. But in many cases, what we have seen that some of these police personnel, they have raped the tribals and they have committed atrocities against these tribals. So obviously, there would be a kind of a generation of a feeling of antagonism, acrimony against the state. Human rights abuses by the local elites or the security forces. And the worst part is that there has been no accountability. There has been a kind of indemnity which has been provided to these security forces personnel. They have been protected and there has been no accountability since then. Political factors. As I said, that in 1964, there was a development of faction. There was a kind of a split which we saw. Some of the people in the Communist Party itself, they advocated for the peaceful transition. Some of them, what they advocated was the violent methods. Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal. And therefore, there were internal strife within the party itself. Perceived state repression. When the locals in these areas, the neutral local population, when they see that their resources are being drained, their resources are being exploited, and it is primarily the state which is doing that, then we had these Maoists who basically exploited this particular thing and said to these locals that it is primarily the state who's taking away your interests. And ultimately what happened, these locals, many of them, they joined these Maoists. So that is how things arose, right? As I told you, the immediate instance, the immediate trigger factor was that of the Naxalbari uprising. Now, the good part, as I already told, is that we have significantly reduced the influence of Maoist movement in the country. And that is the reason we now don't call it a corridor. Rather, we can call it the red pockets. Because very few areas are there in the country where we have the influence of these Maoist leaders. So we have seen the decline of the Naxal movement. How is that visible? The very first is organizational decline. When we talk about the party, obviously, we have declared the CPI Maoist as a terror organization under the UAPA. But the organizational structure of the party, it has its own central committee. The number of people in the central committee, it has significantly reduced. Primarily because many of these people who are a part of the central committee, they are aged, they are ill. So that's one of the main important factors. Then the Politburo, the body which is the main commanding authority. The numbers have significantly reduced from almost 25 to 7. Then we have the cadres. Previously, it had a cadre of almost 11,000, 12,000 people. Now it has significantly reduced to almost 1,000, right? So the state forces, for example, we have the Cobra units of CRPF, right? CRPF is a central paramilitary organization. Or we have the Special Operations Group of Odisha. Or we have the Greyhounds of Andhra, right? Or for example, we have the District Reserve Guards of Chhattisgarh. So they have carried out the precision strikes. And because of that, many leaders have been killed, eliminated. And because of that, what we have witnessed is a significant reduction in these activities which are carried on by the Maoists. Then recent security operations. Because of that, as I told, because of these entities, there were these the attacks which have been carried out against these Maoist leaders, and many of them have been killed. For example, in May this year, we had the leader, Basavaraju, Basavaraju, one of the most important leaders of this movement, he was killed. Then recently in November, Madhvi Hidma has been killed, right? So they were the very important leaders. And when you have the leaders being killed, what really happens is that the organization, it becomes all frustrated because they don't know what to do. And that is where the security forces have exploited this particular gap. They have first killed the leaders and then they have exploited this particular frustration, right? Waning influence in different geographies. Once they had their own liberated zones where no one dared to even step in these areas, where they had their own Janatana Sarkars, their own form of government. But these zones have been liberated. What we are saying is that the security forces have captured these Maoist leaders who were previously working in these zones. And now we have the proper functioning of the government in these areas, right? Now, why the Maoist movement has weakened? What are the reasons? What steps have been taken? Leadership vacuum and aging cadre. As I already told you, that the Politburo or the Central Committee, it has, many of the leaders have been killed, first of all. The others, they have aged. They don't have that kind of vigor which they used to have. Many of them are ill. They're living in the forested areas. So they have a kind of no passion towards the objectives of the revolution itself. Then we have the ethnic divide, very important factor. See, most of the people who are working on ground with respect to the Naxals, those who are the fighting soldiers, they belong to the tribal community of Gonds, most of them. Whereas the leaders, they belong to the higher castes of Andhra. So there is the ethnic divide which is there. And that has been exploited by the security forces also, right? Then we have tribal disillusionment, discontentment. See, what you'll have to understand, that initially once this movement started, most of the people think that it was primarily because of the ideology of Maoism. No, it was not like that. These Maoist leaders, though they had sought the inspiration from the ideology of Mao, but they did not transmit the same to the locals. What they focus upon is the local plays or the songs. And then they slowly told the locals that you are being exploited. So it was primarily the local culture which was exploited by these Maoist leaders in India, right? The Naxals, inspired by the culture propaganda. Also, we have the Salva Judum. Salva Judum, it was a state-sponsored vigilante group. So what the government did, government said that we'll have the people, the locals coming together and united. We'll give them the arms and then they will fight with these Naxal forces. So what really happened, the local people, they saw first these Naxals as committing the acts of crime, violent activities, and then they saw their own people in the form of Salva Judum committing these crimes. So they were frustrated. They said that we all are using violence and it has no end. People are being killed. So they were disillusioned with this aspect of Salva Judum. And many of them said that why not we go with the political means of getting power? Why not we fight the elections? Many of the youth leaders, strategic and ideological weaknesses. There was political mobilization, especially led by the youths, who said that the Salva Judum is committing acts of crimes. The Naxal forces, they are committing acts of crimes. And nothing is happening. We are just continuing this situation. And therefore, we need to basically adopt the principles of parliamentary form of government, where if you have your own reasons, fight elections, win the election, and then do something for the people, right? Security operations modernized. Now, over here, again, one of the very important strategies which the government has come up with is the Samadhan. Now, Samadhan is a strategy. Initially, I told you that it has two primary components. The one is with respect to the security measures. The other is with respect to developmental measures. When we talk about the security measures, the government is carrying out the precision strikes, targeted strikes against these Naxal leaders, the forces, the Naxal forces. They're also coordinating properly. They're having their own plans of actions, right? Intelligence framework is being used. The next aspect is that of the developmental methods. What are the measures being taken? For example, in the form of special expenditure with respect to the construction of roads, the towers, telecom towers, education, hospitals, right? School facilities, in these tribal areas. So developmental measures along with the security measures, that is what the core component of Samadhan scheme is all about. Do read about it, right? As I said, that we have the Cobra unit, Commando Battalion for Resolute Actions of the CRPF. Then we have the District Reserve Guards of Chhattisgarh. Then we have the Special Operations Group of Odisha. We have the Greyhounds of Andhra Pradesh. They are carrying out these strikes. Then we have decapitation operations and targeted strikes. Again, the same thing. Making sure that whatever infrastructure they have. For example, as I told you, that Basavaraju was the leader of this particular movement. And he was killed in May. The whole infrastructure in the Karegutta Hills in Chhattisgarh was decapitated. It was eliminated. And then that dealt a severe blow to the whole organization, right? Mass surrenders and arrests. The government has been telling, you must have seen recently, Maharashtra government, it has declared, it has come out with a very good policy, rehabilitation policy, where it has asked these tribals who have joined these forces to come back and join the mainstream. And because of that, many of the leaders even, they have come back and rejoined, right, the mainstream. Successful civil society-led democratic movements. Very important to understand. You must have heard about what happened in the Niyamgiri Hills in Odisha. We had the tribals, we had the Vedanta group, which was primarily mining in these areas for aluminium, the bauxite mining. And we had the tribals over there, along with the civil society. They carried on their struggle, the peaceful struggle. And because of that, ultimately, the Vedanta had to stop its operation. So that is the power of civil society also. And then that has been a learning for many of the people who have committed violent acts. That if transition is possible, if our own things can be heard through peaceful methods, why do we want to go with these violent methods? We should not go with that. How to sustain the security gains? What should be the way forward? The very first is sustain the tactical and security gains. For those areas, you first give them the option. If they do not agree, make sure you eliminate them through precision strikes, through targeted killings, right, by the security forces of these people. If they don't agree, obviously. Then robust rehabilitation and reintegration scheme. This is very core component. Because see, even if you have eliminated these people, if there's a vacuum which is created, it can be again exploited by these Maoists, by these Naxal people, Naxal forces. So what you'll have to focus upon is effective, robust rehabilitation and reintegration schemes. Over here, what I'm talking about is that those people whom you want to come and join the mainstream, give them proper funds, give them proper skills so that they can come up with their own self-employment opportunities. They can open their own ventures or they can join a particular firm when they have certain skills. Give them those skills, value-added skills, right? So only then it would be possible to make sure that you sustain the security gains. Then we have local governance and development. Whatever laws, statutory frameworks you have, whatever policies you have, that must be implemented in letter and spirit, not just on papers. You have the Scheduled Tribes and the Forest Dwellers Act, Rights Act. Make sure that it is fully implemented. The Gram Sabha, which is the nodal agency, it must be empowered. It should not be like we have the local officials and the local leaders, they have a nexus and then corruption is being committed. Fake signs are being obtained with respect to those tribals. That should not happen. Trust with the tribal communities. How can you regain the trust? If there have been instances where atrocities have been committed, rapes have been committed, persons have been brutally killed, there has to be a proper judicial inquiry. There has to be accountability mechanisms. Only then you can regain the trust, right? Political engagement and grievance redressal. The people, see what we did with respect to the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. We basically talked about the political mobilization at the grassroots. The same thing applies here. You will have to tell the locals that through peaceful methods of democratic transition, you can definitely achieve your goals. So that more and more, especially the youths, participate in the elections, right? And then they win and then they do something for their own people. Prevent the ideological vacuum. The same thing. If you are just carrying the security measures and if there are no developmental measures, there would be a vacuum which would be created. And then that can be exploited by these forces. Then we have de-radicalization. Even the National Security Advisor has a lot of times focused upon the de-radicalization campaigns. If you know that there are certain people who are radicalized or on the verge of being radicalized, now this applies in both the terror cases also. Proper de-radicalization has to take place. You need to counsel them. You need to make them feel that they are a part of, they're just one of us, right? So de-radicalization campaigns through information, education, communication, through counseling centers, they must be done, right? So what we are trying to say is that definitely the gains have been made, but if you have to continue these gains, if you have to really make sure that the Naxal movement is completely rooted away, then you'll have to make sure that these steps are carried on in letter and spirit. Let's have a mains practice question. The Maoist movement in India, which was once a result of many factors, is now in decline. I have given you the numbers, you can also cite that. Analyze the reasons for this decline and suggest measures to permanently end the left-wing extremism. Very important, this is a probable topic. Reason being that we have seen significant reduction in the number of these instances. So naturally it becomes very important. Government is saying that by 31st March, we'll eradicate, 31st March 2026, we'll eradicate the issue of Naxalism in the country. So therefore, it is a policy target set by the Union Home Minister. So therefore, it becomes very, very important. Do write the answer. And yes, if you're liking the initiative, do not forget to press the like button. And also, let us mention in the comments. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the recently concluded Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between Republic of India and the Sultanate of Oman. Now, what you'll have to understand is that we have these countries in West Asia. For example, we have Oman, we have United Arab Emirates, we have Saudi Arabia, we have Kuwait, Qatar. Now, these are the countries which have a lot of reserves of oil resources. And this is something which India is in dire need of. More than 85% of our overall oil needs, it is done through the imports. And a substantial chunk flows from these countries of West Asia. Next thing is that these countries have a lot of forex with them. So they can be very good investors. And we need a lot of investment in different domains, be it technology, be it agriculture, be it defense. So definitely, these countries are very important for India. So what we are looking at is a picture where India, see in 2022, India already started or came up with the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with UAE. And Oman, the Sultanate of Oman, is a second country with which India has started. India has started this particular, has come up in the agreement of CEPA, right? Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, how we can use these CEPAs to basically enhance the interactions between India and these West Asian countries, and how we can realize the very objectives of our foreign policy. That is something which India has to do, and it's very important, right? So what this particular deal is all about, it's the Oman first bilateral trade agreement in nearly 2 decades. See, Oman also has a free trade agreement with US, and that it was started in 2009 itself. So therefore, see, Oman is a country which has, first of all, a lot of oil resources, plus it has a lot of these chemicals in the form of potash, which are very important when we talk about the fertilizer needs of India, right? So there are a lot of other chemicals which are also imported from Oman. So this becomes a natural partner. Oman becomes a natural partner for India with respect to the overall trade and development. For India, this is a part of a broader push to expand the FTAs with key partners, including United Kingdom earlier in 2025. See, what you'll have to understand is 2 things with respect to the FTAs. First of all, the government of India has been on a war footing in a rapid mode, trying to basically establish or come up in agreement with respect to these trade deals with major economies around the world, either because of the pull factors or the push factors. We already know what is happening because of Donald Trump. He has been imposing a lot of tariffs, and India is now, we are having a kind of a communication with respect to formalizing a trade deal between India and the US. Similarly, we are doing with the UK or the EU or the other countries. We have been in the process. In the last few years, India has come up in a lot of trade deals with different countries. The second thing which you'll have to understand is that the trade deals which we made in the years of 2009, 10, 11, 12, they are not being very good for India. Because initially we had a kind of an expectation that we will receive a lot of benefits on the basis of these trade deals. For example, the India-ASEAN trade deals, or the trade deal with respect to Japan. So initially, or South Korea, we had hoped that India would also get its due share. But this has not happened. Instead, these countries have benefited more. So there is a kind of an introspection which is needed. Self-questioning. That what are the issues with respect to the FTA agreements of India, and they need to be rectified. So first, we'll have to basically go with more and more number of FTAs with different countries. Second, we'll have to rectify the issues so that we have a kind of a more fair mechanism, fair sharing of benefits with respect to these free trade agreements. I hope it is clear. The agreement covers goods, services, and investments. So it's a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. So obviously it would cover a lot of areas, be it that of goods, commodities, services, and investment, making it broader than a simple tariff reduction treaty. It's not just based up, not just even investment, services, and goods. Rather, the other things have also been specified with respect to the skilling of the personnel, right? Key features: Oman will provide zero duty access more than 98% of its tariff lines, covering 99% of Indian exports by value. Then India will reduce the tariff on almost 78% of the tariff lines, covering 94, almost 95% of imports from Oman by value. Now, see, this is something which you'll have to understand. In 2020-21, we had almost, with the total trade volume, it was almost 5.38 US billion dollars. It has doubled. And right now it's almost 10.6. India imported goods worth US billion dollars 6.54. And we basically exported goods worth 4.06 US billion dollars. So again, we are now, there is more of import which is coming from Oman, and that is but natural, because we are importing a lot of substances, important substances in the form of bituminous substances, fertilizers, rare earth metals, which form the very backbone of the emerging technologies, critical technologies, right? So we have many of these metals, many of these rare earth elements which are found in the Sultanate of Oman. So we are basically importing that for our electronics industry, for our battery storage systems, for our renewable energy technologies, RETs, right? So natural, it's a partner. It's a country which is of natural importance. Organic chemicals, which are again very important when we talk about the agriculture aspect, right? Or the food security aspect. That is what you'll have to understand. What are the things which we are exporting? Mineral fuel. See, you must understand, we import a lot of crude oil, but India is a kind of a net exporter when we talk about the refined oil products, right? We are also exporting inorganic chemicals. We are exporting the machinery and parts to Oman, aircrafts and parts. So this is what you'll have to understand, right? Both sides have kept sensitive sectors out of the concessions or applied tariff rate quotas to balance protection with liberalization. That is what our concern with RCEP was also about. In Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is primarily a China-led initiative, it's a trade agreement, we did not participate in it. We came out of it, primarily because we were sensitive about certain sectors, be it the domestic manufacturers or the farmers. So similarly, what we have maintained is the same posture, that we will not let the effects, the negative effects, come over these sensitive sectors, be it the farmers or the domestic manufacturers. Now, sectoral opportunities, we have covered a lot of areas. Lot of sectors have been covered in this particular agreement. For example, the textiles and apparels, the ready-made garments also, automobiles and auto components, food processing, engineering goods, plastic furniture, gems and jewelry, pharmaceuticals, right? India is the hub for generic medicines, right? Agrochemicals and renewable energy, services including information technology, professional services. A lot of our Indian companies, multinational, they have become multinational. They're providing a lot of services to a lot of clients in these countries of Middle East, right? Services, investment and mobility. The CEPA includes liberalized conditions for services, trade and foreign direct investment. As I already told you, that there are certain industries in India, certain domains which are in dire needs of funds, the startup ecosystems. So we have a lot of these venture capitalists in these countries of Middle East. They have a lot of forex reserve with them, forex. So that can be definitely used as a kind of an amount to invest in these emerging startups, right? So these countries can be very good investors. It expands the opportunities for professionals in key sectors. We have a lot of skilled workforce, and not even the lower skilled workforce also. So if we provide them adequate skills, then these people can basically go in these countries and work over there and earn more than what they're earning in India. They can act as the real ambassadors of the country, right? Promote the soft power of India, right? Then we have the easier movements of skilled personnel, strategic and non-tariff provisions, right? The pact also incorporates the cooperation in maritime, infrastructure, energy, transition, food security. So again, the very objective, the very ambit or the domain of the CAP is not just related to goods, services or investments. Rather, it covers a lot of other areas also. And these areas are something which are of strategic importance for India. Be it the maritime aspect. We already know that Indian Ocean region is very important when we talk about the overall security apparatus. And in the Indian Ocean, we have India as one of the most important country. So we'll have to come up in partnership with different countries. And we are doing it through various mechanisms. For example, the Colombo Security Conclave. For example, the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association. So therefore, Oman is also very important. When we talk about the very important Strait of Hormuz, you must be aware that it is between Iran and that of the Sultanate of Oman. It's not between UAE and Iran. So therefore, Strait of Hormuz, because a lot of supplies of crude oil and the liquefied natural gas, LNG, goes from this particular one end to the other through the Strait of Hormuz, this country obviously becomes important for India, right? Memorandum of understandings have been agreed on agriculture, higher education and maritime cooperation. Importance for India. This would definitely boost the exports and market diversification. What India needs right now is, first, that we boost our overall exports. Second, we need to diversify our market. That's very, very important. Our market is very isolated. It's very specific to countries, some of the European countries. We have not diversified it, or some African countries. This is the time where we diversify. How we can do so? By working upon the quality aspect of our products. By making sure that our products are at the par when we talk about the quality aspect. Right? So if we are exporting a particular commodity to US or UK, when they would accept it, if our quality matches with that of our competitors, for example, China or for example, Thailand, right? The CPA Indian exporters would make the Indian exporters predictable and preferential access. The Indian exporters would get a good access in these countries, especially in Oman, right? And help de-risk the exports. Indian labor-intensive sectors, for example, textiles and jewelry, would be at significant advantage, right? Then we have strategic gateway, already explained, to Gulf and beyond. Oman's strategic location with respect to Strait of Hormuz. Broader access to GCC region. We have these countries, Gulf Cooperation Council. We have Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, the Sultanate of Oman. So they are very important countries and form the grouping of GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council. And we already have a CAPA with UAE. Now we have come up with Oman. So therefore, it would interact India's overall interactions with that of the GCC countries, different GCC countries, right? And not just GCC. It would be a kind of a gateway which would lead us to the other countries of Africa, Central Asia. Indian companies can basically be there and they can set up their own manufacturing facilities in Oman. And then Oman can emerge as a regional export hub. So Indian companies can invest over there, set up their manufacturing bases, and then they can emerge as a hub and spoke model can be followed and integrate into the Gulf supply chains. Services, investment, skills. The pact supports services trade. Indian professionals and firms expand in various services. We already know that a lot of IT companies, Indian IT companies, have established their offshore offices in these countries of Middle East. So then that gives us the advantage where many of the skilled workforce can also go and participate in the overall economic development. Indian investments in Oman more than tripled since 2020. So we have also invested a lot in these countries, right? Reaching around $5 billion US, spanning green steel. We are investing in these emerging areas. The sunrise sectors, what we call as the green steel, green ammonia, aluminium and logistics. We are focusing upon. We are using our expertise. We are working on our strengths and we have basically come up with these investments in these emerging sectors. Strategic and energy cooperation. Oman is a very key, very important partner when we talk about the maritime aspect. The security with respect to the Indian Ocean region. We basically say that we are the net security provider. And for that, we'll have to come up in partnership with different countries in the IOR, right? Strategic cooperation, enhancing India's geopolitical reach. Importance in the context of overall GCC. India already has CAPA with the UAE. We already discussed that. And now CAPA with Oman. Now, this deepens the economic ties with the GCC members. It has a kind of a prospect where the other countries of the GCC can also come up with a similar agreement with India, right? What should be the way forward for India? We should leverage Oman as a regional hub. So why not we can have Indian companies coming and setting up their manufacturing bases in Oman, and then from Oman, it can basically flow into different areas. What we can have is the supply of those manufactured items to African countries or Central Asian countries. So use Oman as a regional hub because Oman has a very strategic location. Look at this. And this is Strait of Hormuz. This is Oman. This part belongs to Oman. And this is a very strategic location which Oman has. So we should rather use it. and re-export base for the wider GCC, Africa and Central Asia, deepen services and investment integration, focus on the sectors such as information technology, healthcare, education. Right now, we are having integration of technology in the healthcare domain. Many of the investors, many of these people in these countries of Middle East, they have significantly invested in different domains like precision technology, nanotechnology, biotechnology. So why not we also become a partner in this? Professional services, digital infrastructure to expand India's footprint. We already have an advantage when we talk about the public digital aspect, what we call as digital public infrastructure, DPI. So we have our own advantage in the form of India stack. We have the Aadhaar system, we have the UPI system. So we can basically use it for our own advantage by coming up in agreement in these countries. Then we have the strengthening the MSMEs and export competitiveness. The quality of the product, which our MSMEs form the lifeblood of the Indian economy. Their share in the overall export is too much. In the overall GDP contribution is too much. So why not we focus upon the quality enhancement aspect in the MSMEs so that these countries can accept the products which our MSMEs are producing. Provide support base to MSMEs in the form of credit, logistics, standards, compliance to maximize the benefits from duty-free market access. Now we have a situation where there are no duties which would be applied. But if the quality does not match to their expectations, for example, if you have an importer from Oman, if he's or she's basically importing something from India, if the quality does not match, he may reject. So we'll have to focus upon the quality aspect, right? Complementary infrastructure and connectivity, enhance the port linkages. We already have this particular Chabahar linkage with respect to Iran. But again, because of the US sanctions and other things, it is right now under the shadow. So why not come up with the other options? Why not we can have the investments with respect to the development of port infrastructure in Oman itself? Because Oman has a strategic location. If we have a port over here itself, we can definitely, this can be used as a transshipment hub where facilities, where commodities can be transshipped to the African countries, the Horn of Africa or the Northern African countries, right? Multimodal logistics, sea, rail links, right? Direct shipping routes between India and Oman to reduce the trade costs and delivery times. Negotiating with the other GCC members, India should accelerate negotiations with Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain to build a cohesive set of bilateral agreements that cumulatively benefit India's GCC engagement. So again, the same thing. If we have already come up with an agreement with the UAE and Oman, Sultanate of Oman, why not we can have a similar agreement with the other countries of GCC? Monitor and revise the sensitive sector safeguard. Ensure the adequate protection for sensitive domestic sectors while progressively widening the liberalization to boost manufacturer gains, mutual gains. See, we have, since many years, we have been saying that there are certain sensitive sectors in India in the form of the farmers or domestic manufacturing capabilities. We cannot just always use it as a kind of an excuse. We'll have to invest in our competitiveness. We have the other countries also. China did it. So we can also do it, right? So we'll have to invest significantly in the competitive aspects, making sure that the overall competition, making sure that the kind of products we are manufacturing, they match the quality of those being produced by China or Vietnam. You must have seen, you just look at any of the jackets or any of the trousers or any of the things which are made by Adidas or Zara or anything. You'll see that it's written made in Bangladesh, made in Vietnam. So if those countries can do it, Puma or the other things, why Nike, they're manufacturing each and everything. These small countries of Thailand, Vietnam, Bangladesh. Why cannot we do that? So that is a question which we'll have to ask, and therefore we'll have to focus upon developing the solid indigenous base. For that, we'll have to invest significantly in the competition aspect. I hope it is clear. Very important topic. India-Oman deal comprehensively covers wide domains of trade and investment. Discuss, so talk about what has been the transition with respect to the overall trade, which areas we have covered, the important points with respect to CEPA, how this deal would add heft in India's broader West Asia strategy, how we can use it for our own advantage, how we can use it as a leverage, and also suggest a robust roadmap. So 15 marks, 250 words, the demand of the question. And I've always said that. Please first try to locate or identify the demand of the question. The demand of the question, here there are three demands. The first is with respect to the India-Oman trade deal, the important points. Second is with respect to how it can add to India's overall strategy with respect to West Asia. And third is with respect to that what should be the way forward. I hope it is clear. Let's go to the simplified section. Coming to the simplified section, we have the first topic which talks about the recently concluded India-Russia logistics agreement. Now, see, what we'll have to understand first is that what do we mean by logistics agreement? Now, whenever we talk about logistics agreement, it is primarily in terms of the militaries of different countries. Let's say we have country A and we have country B, and they have concluded a logistics agreement. What it means is, then if we have a situation where an aircraft of country A or an aircraft carrier or a warship of country A goes near the country B and it has certain issues in its functioning, it needs certain supplies, then if these countries have come up in an agreement, a logistic agreement, then country B would provide the necessary equipment and supplies to this particular aircraft or warship carrier or the other warship. That is what you'll have to understand, right? So this is a mutual agreement where countries promise to each other that we are going to provide each other the important military supplies in times of crisis. Whenever you will have your any warship or any aircraft or any other defense platform coming to us, then we'll provide the necessary facilities. India has concluded the logistic agreement with various countries. We have concluded with Russia. We have also concluded with US. So we have 4 foundational agreements with the US. We all must be aware of that, right? So let's talk about that what this particular agreement with Russia entails. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed into a federal law a major military cooperation agreement with India. The reciprocal exchange of logistics support. Reciprocal means that we both countries would do for each other, right? Was ratified by both the House of the Russian Parliament before receiving the presidential approval. It will come into force after the formal exchange of instruments of ratification between Russia and India, right? What RELOS entails? The agreement sets out the procedures governing the movement of military formations, warships, military aircraft between Russia and India, as well as the arrangement for providing the logistics support to each other's forces. Whenever in times of need, there's, let's say, a particular malfunctioning in the aircraft, or we need some supplies, so we'll be provided. Similarly, we'll have to provide those supplies to the Russian aircraft or ship if it enters into the Indian territory. If it requests for that. It will facilitate the mutual use of airspace by Russian and Indian military aircraft and has provisions related to the port calls by warships of both countries. The established framework is intended to be applied during joint military exercises, whenever we have these exercises, training activities, as well as in situations involving humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, HADR operations. Important. Use these words in your answers. HADR operations. That said, the agreement also allows for its provision to be used in other scenarios subject to mutual consent. So we'll use in the case of joint exercises, we'll use in case of HADR operations and other areas whenever we agree by consent. For India, RELOS provides an institutional framework for access to Russian air and naval base from Vladivostok on the Pacific to Murmansk on the Arctic for refueling, repairs, maintenance, boosting operational reach and readiness, especially for Russian origin equipment. This is also a very important thing, that we have a major chunk of the defense platforms of Russian origin. And this agreement, let's say you have a particular aircraft, if it is flowing near Russia and if it comes with any malfunctioning, so then that can be repaired very easily if we have this particular agreement with Russia. Not only does this deepen the existing defense partnership between Russia and India, it also supports New Delhi's broader Indo-Pacific strategy by leveraging Russia's extensive network. Access to over 40 Russian bases will help the Indian Navy and Air Force to operate further from home during the long-range deployments. Reciprocally, the Russian military will gain greater access to Indian ports and airfields for refueling, repairs, operations. RELOS will thus institutionalize the support for Russian forces in the Indian Ocean and bolster Russia's position in a multipolar world. What Modi ji calls, Prime Minister Modi, he calls Russia as the Dhruv Tara, right, who has always been there for India. So therefore, this agreement is of crucial importance. RELOS is similar to existing agreement LEMUA, Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Understanding. So we have logistic agreement with the different countries and we'll read about it, right, including that of the US. COMCASA, Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement, and BECA, Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement with the US. However, it has been tailored to the India-Russia dynamic. So we have not just copied the provisions of India-US agreements. We have made this particular agreement as per the needs of India and Russia. COMCASA, inked in 2018, permits the US to give India encrypted communications equipment. So we have certain equipments which are encrypted. Only those people who have access to that encryption who have the passcode for that inscription can basically know what is being communicated. So that is the beauty of encryption, right? Allowing Indian and US military leaders and their planes and ships to communicate over secure networks in both peace and conflict. LEMOA, which was signed in 2016, enables the US and Indian militaries to refuel from one another's military bases and get supplies. We have a very important base in the Indian Ocean region of the US. It was primarily a British Indian Ocean Territory, BIOT. But we have a US naval base over there. Can you just name that particular island? I will be really very happy if someone does that. Spare parts and services from each other's land facilities, air bases and ports. BECA facilitates sharing of high-end military technology, including access to US geospatial satellite and drone data. While these pacts strengthen India, a key US partner in the Quad, to balance Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific, for the US, they make India more capable and interoperable partner in its strategic goal towards free and Indo-Pacific Ocean. So we always think that US is very important for India. But you'll have to understand the other way also, that India is very important for US because the focus of US has shifted from the larger Atlantic aspect to that of the Indo-Pacific. And in the Indo-Pacific, India is the most important geographical entity. Plus, the challenges with respect to Chinese aggression, which US has been encountering for many years. This also makes India one of the most indispensable partner for the US. That is what you'll have to understand. What is RELAWS? We already discussed. The agreement allows military aircraft, ships, and troops from both countries to use each other's facilities. Just go through that. Key operational implications. What are the implications involved? Strategic benefits for India. Streamlines logistics support and joint operations. Grants access to Arctic port and Northern Sea routes. There are also many of the prospects that we can also have a lot of research operations in the Arctic, right? Because there has been an increasing militarization of the Arctic. And therefore, many countries, China and Russia, obviously, they are extending their reach in the Arctic. So therefore, this also becomes important for India. This particular partnership with Russia will definitely open more windows for India. Support scientific missions and strategic positions in polar waters. Ensure the smooth integration of Russian military hardware. For example, we have Sukhoi jets, T-90 tanks. Strategic benefits for Russia. Maintains global operation reach despite Western sanctions. Gains reciprocal access in the Indian Ocean. So Russia's expanse in Indian Ocean would also be increased through this particular agreement. Strengthen ties with a key long-term partner in Asia. India's experience with similar pacts. So RELAWS is as a part of India's approach to military logistics agreement. India has signed similar pacts with USA, United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, France, Singapore, South Korea, Vietnam, right? The strategic value became clear after 2016's LEMOA between India and the US, which allowed India to strengthen joint operations, logistics, and long-distance deployment. Let's have a go through with respect to 4 foundational agreements. GSOMIA, the General Security of Military Information Agreement, it guaranteed that the two countries would protect any classified information or technology that they shared. Then we have LEMOA, Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Understanding. It allows the militaries of US and India to refuel, for example, each other's bases and access supplies, spare parts, services from each other's land facilities, air bases and ports, which that can then be reimbursed. Then we have COMCASA, Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement. The pact allows US to provide India with its encrypted communications equipment and systems so that the Indian and US military commanders, aircraft and ships can communicate through secure networks during both times of peace as well as war. Then we have BECA, which is Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement. It would help India get real-time access to American geospatial intelligence that will enhance the accuracy. Geospatial means the GPS systems, right? Positioning of different assets. They're locating their coordinates, right? Accuracy of automated systems and weapons like missiles and armed drones. So these are the 4 foundational agreements which India has signed with the US. I hope it is clear. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to a very important body associated with the art and culture, which is the Sahitya Akademi. Now, Sahitya Akademi was about to announce certain awards, but they were later cancelled. They were not announced, primarily because of some issues with the Ministry of Culture. Let's go through this. Confusion prevailed on Thursday when Sahitya Akademi was forced to cancel a press conference called by it to announce the annual literary awards following a directive from the Union Ministry of Culture. What it tells you, you need not to know that, what are the tussles which are involved. if the tussles are based on rational reasons, you'll have to understand. But what is important to know is that the parent ministry of Sahitya Akademi is Ministry of Culture, right? The Cultural Ministry had sent a note to Akademi reminding it of Memorandum of Understanding signed with all the 4 autonomous institutions working under it. So there are 4. It itself tells you that there are 4 autonomous agencies working under Ministry of Culture. What are those? National School of Drama. Know that because it can be asked in the prelims. The Sangeet Natak Academy, the Lalit Kala Academy and the Sahitya Akademi. That an exercise of restructuring of awards need to be taken in consultation with the ministry. The MOU was signed in July. This is and what the ministry has written to Sahitya Akademi. This is to invite your attention to the MOU signed between academies and the ministries for in the year 2025-26, wherein it has been very clearly stipulated that the exercise of restructuring of award is required to be undertaken in consultation with the ministry. So ministry is in a way asking these autonomous bodies that you need to have consultation with us whenever you are structuring the awards, whenever you are planning the awards, right? In this regard, you are requested to inform the ministry of the measures taken so far. The ministry further directed that till such time the restructuring process is duly approved by the ministry, no process for declaration of awards shall be undertaken without the prior approval of the ministry. Many of the academicians in the country, what they have been saying is that this points towards, not just this particular case, but this points towards the overall scenario where the government has been taking control over the functioning of these autonomous body. So this is something which is quite concerning. The note was sent to all 4 autonomous culture bodies. Let's go through this, what this particular. So I have taken this snippet from the website itself so that you understand the importance of the websites, right? So this is from the Ministry of Culture. Sahitya Akademi, India's National Academy of Letters, was established in 1954 by the Government of India as India's premier literary institution. The Academy preserves and promotes the literature contained in the 24 Indian languages, 22 scheduled languages plus Rajasthani and English. Always remember that. Again, I am repeating, 22 languages which are there in the 8th schedule. Then we have the next English and Rajasthani, right? Languages recognized through the awards, fellowship, grants, publications, literary programs, workshops, exhibitions. The Academy also undertakes literary exchange programs with various countries across the globe to promote Indian literature beyond the shores of India. Sahitya Akademi has been set up for the development of Indian literature and to set high literary standards to foster and coordinate literary activities in all the Indian languages. It is an autonomous body. It is a society registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860. Under the Ministry of Culture, was established by the Government of India in 1954. It has headquarters in New Delhi and 4 regional offices. The Academy has recognized 24 Indian languages, 22 languages enumerated in the Constitution of India, and then we have English and Rajasthani. Do remember, important. There are different awards which are given. For example, Sahitya Akademi Award, Sahitya Akademi Fellowship, you can just go through that, and Bhasha Samman. Then we have different fellowships also. Let's also go through the other 2 important bodies. Sangeet Natak Academy. It was established in 1952 as India's first national academy for the arts. Its main focus is on promoting and showcasing performing arts in the country. The Academy also collaborates with international organizations like UNESCO to save the cultural heritage of India, what we call as the intangible cultural heritage. It oversees the various specialized institutions like National School of Drama, established in 1959, right? So it has overall jurisdiction over NSD also, National School of Drama. Lalit Kala Academy. The government established the National Academy of Art, also known as the Lalit Kala Academy, in 1954 with the primary purpose of promoting fine arts in India. It is under the Ministry of Culture and was given the statutory authority in 1957 under the Societies Registration Act of 1860. It is headquartered in New Delhi. They have regional centers in different parts of the country. Just know that because many times UPSC has asked direct questions with respect to the ministry or the mandate, whether it's an autonomous body or registered as a society or not, whether it's a department. So do pay attention. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to a very important body protecting the interests of the scheduled tribes, which is the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. So it has basically said that it is going to investigate in a particular case. Let's go through this. Now, what you understand from this article is that it has the power to investigate, right? The National Commission for Scheduled Tribes on Thursday announced that it would investigate the alleged murder of a minor tribal student by 3 of his hostel mates at the Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences, which claims to provide education to nearly 30,000 tribal students in its Bhubaneswar campus. The NCST has issued notices directing the Home, School and Mass Education and Scheduled Tribes and Scheduled Caste Development, Minorities and Backward Classes Welfare Department to furnish the information with respect to. So it has also the power to basically issue directives to different departments to furnish the information, right? The commission has decided to inquire into the matter in pursuance of the powers conferred upon it under the Article 338A of the Constitution of India. So this also mentions the article also, right? The National Commission for Scheduled Tribes is a constitutional body that safeguards and monitors the rights of India's scheduled tribes. Constituted under Article 338A of the Constitution of India, the organization monitors policies, that what are different policies with respect to the protection of the interests of the STs, scheme implementation, what are the different schemes carried on by the state governments or the central governments for the protection or for the making sure that there is a development with respect to these scheduled tribes for the benefits of the ST communities and make sure that they receive the right treatment and equal opportunity in society. Scheduled tribes are tribal communities or tribes that are recognized and listed under Article 342 of the Indian Constitution. The article gives the power to the President to notify the communities that are considered scheduled tribes based on factors like socio-economic backwardness and cultural distinctiveness. National Commission for Scheduled Tribes Evolution. So how this has basically evolved. Let's go through this. See, initially the Constitution under Article 338 provided for the special officer for the protection of the interests of SCs and STs. Later we had the 65th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1990. What it did was that it basically said that now we'll have a multi-member body, National Commission for SCs and STs. Then we had the 89th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2003, which basically said that since SCs and STs have their own differences, right, they're different from each other, we'll basically go with 2 different bodies. So under 338, we have the National Commission for the SCs. Under 338A, we have the National Commission for the STs. It's a multi-member body. I hope it is clear. This has been the evolution. Just go through that. NCST's powers and function. The National Commission for Scheduled Tribes derives its authority from Article 338 of the Indian Constitution, which outlines its structure, composition and operational framework. According to 338A, the Constitution of India makes it mandatory to form a National Commission for Scheduled Tribes to protect the rights of the scheduled tribes. The President of India is responsible for the creation of commission and appointment of the members, including the chairperson, vice chairperson and other 3 members. The President determines the powers and tenure of their in the service. The NCST Commission also has a power and liberty to regulate its own procedure, ensuring effective and independent functioning. The constitutional framework empowers the NCST to uphold and protect the rights of the scheduled tribes. Composition. The NCST consists of a chairperson, vice chairperson and 3 other members, all chosen by the President of India. Do remember that who chooses them? It's the President. Obviously under the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. One of the members of the committee has to be a woman. At present, the NCST committee has 4 members, with the position of Vice President being vacant. Tenure of NCST. All members of the NCST are appointed for a period of 3 years and cannot be reappointed more than 2 terms. During the tenure, the tribal community addresses the grievances, policies, recommendations related to the improvement of the tribal community. Then we have NCST functions and duties, implementation of the safeguards and rules which are meant for the scheduled tribes, addressing the complaints and grievances with respect to the STs, making recommendations and preparing the annual report, making recommendations to the government on improvement measures like educational development, welfare initiatives, advising actions to curb practices like atrocities and discrimination against STs. Powers of NCST. The Commission can investigate what it has done in this particular case, complaints and make necessary recommendations when it comes to the rights of the ST. Organization can make recommendations that impact the laws and policies. NCST committee can demand evidence, examine documents, summon the individuals, the officials. Committee has a power to take disciplinary action against the individuals for violating the rights of the ST community. The committee makes and reports and recommendations for the ST welfare that is presented to the President of India, who tables these reports in both the houses of the Parliament. So they give report, whatever the research they do, to the President of India, and then he or she places it on the floor of the House. I hope it is clear. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, here's a mention of passive euthanasia. So Supreme Court is considering passive euthanasia for a particular person who is of 31 years of age and has been in persistent vegetative state for the last 13 years. First of all, what do we mean by euthanasia? It is the deliberate ending of someone's life. But the question is, how can this be allowed? Because this goes against, if you look in the Indian context, it goes against the very principle of Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. But see, if you have a particular person who is in a particular state from which that person cannot ideally recover, a person can be in a state of coma, a person can be completely paralyzed or brain dead. In this situation, what happens that the person is allowed to die. So there can be two methods, there can be two deliberate ways of ending the life of a person who is in persistent vegetative state. It can be through active methods, what we call as active euthanasia, or it can be by withdrawing the life support system which are there on that particular person, because of which the person is alive. Though that person cannot move, cannot do anything, because that person is in a vegetative state. So in India, we have followed the passive euthanasia. So there was one of the very important cases of the Aruna Shanbag. So there was a particular nurse, and in 1970s, she was brutally raped. And because of that, what happened? She basically was left in a persistent vegetative state. For so many years, she was on the life support system. And there were petitions in the Supreme Court regarding that she must be allowed to die. Because right to life and personal liberty also includes the right to have a dignified death. So many of the petitions were there in the Supreme Court, and finally Supreme Court allowed the passive euthanasia. So in Indian context, please remember this, we do not allow active euthanasia. There is nothing like active euthanasia which is present in the overall jurisprudence in Indian scenario. But we allow for passive euthanasia, where we withdraw the life support system and the person automatically dies. This is very important, especially in the context of Article 21. Right to life and personal liberty also includes right to dignified death. Right, I hope it is clear. Euthanasia refers to the act of deliberately ending a person's life to relieve them of the suffering. So in this particular case, we have the parents of this person who is of 31 years of age, who have basically requested the Supreme Court. Just understand their condition, right? They have requested the Supreme Court to allow the passive euthanasia because their son has been in that state, in the state of comatose, in the state of coma for the last 13 years. Just understand their pain. And it is really important that that person must be given death in a dignified manner, right? So therefore, they have requested the Supreme Court. It can be classified based on the method employed and the nature of consent. Types of euthanasia, it can be based upon the classification. For example, it can be active euthanasia, where direct action to cause the patient death. For example, you can inject a particular medicine, administering a lethal injection. More controversial, less widely accepted. Because see, many times consent may be forced, and in person may not want to die, but consent may be obtained and forcibly the person is killed. So that is wrong, right? Passive euthanasia, allowing death by withdrawing or withholding the life-sustaining treatment. Let's say a person is on ventilator for years or a particular life-supporting system. So that supporting system is removed and the person dies naturally. Turning off a ventilator, legally recognized in many countries, including India. We have done that in Aruna Shanbag case. Do remember, right? Classification based on consent, voluntary euthanasia, explicit request. Netherlands, Belgium do that. Non-voluntary euthanasia, patient is unable to provide the consent. Example, if the person is in coma, family members of the legal representatives. Involuntary euthanasia, against the will of the patient, unethical, equated to murder. That is what you'll have to understand. Let's go to the last topic. Coming to the last topic of today's discussion, here's a mention of a very important body, which is the Competition Commission of India. So many people have submitted complaints to the CCI with respect to Indigo abusing its market dominance. See, we already know what happened with respect to the Indigo airline a few days ago and the chaos that was created. What people have said is that during these times, Indigo abused its market dominance and it raised the airfares to unsustainable levels. So this is something which goes against the market principles, and therefore complaints have been submitted and CCI is now starting an investigation. The Competition Commission of India on Thursday said that it had initiated an inquiry against the Indigo following complaints it had received against the airline over the recent disruptions. The CCI has taken cognizance, has taken a note of the information filed against Indigo in the context of recent disruptions witnessed in the aviation sector across various routes. Based on the initial assessment, the Commission has decided to further in the matter in accordance to the provisions of Competition Act of 2002. So what you understand is that this is a statutory body. There is a law which forms the basis of Competition Commission of India. Abuse of position. So there's a person who says that he has basically filed the complaint. What he says is, he told the Hindu that his Delhi-Bangalore flight was cancelled by the airline and the tickets offered for the travel on December 7 were at a much higher price, which amounted to abuse of its dominant position in the market. Let's go through this particular body. So Competition Commission of India. Tell me the ministry and the department under which the overall jurisdiction of CCI lies. Please mention in the comment. Very important thing. The Competition Act of 2002, as amended by the Competition Amendment Act of 2007, follows the philosophy of modern competition laws. The Act prohibits anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominant position. We already saw the recent case of Google, right, where it was alleged that it is using its dominant position with respect to the apps, right, by enterprises, and regulates combinations, acquisitions, acquiring and control, merger and acquisitions, which cause or likely to cause appreciable adverse effect on competition. So it basically tries to maintain the spirit of competition in the market. It makes sure that no action is taken by any of the entities which affects the competition in the market. The objective of the Act are sought to be achieved through the Competition Commission of India, which has been established by the central government with effect from 14th October 2003. The commission shall consist of a chairperson and not less than 2 and not more than 6 other members appointed by the central government. It is the duty of the commission to eliminate practices having adverse effect on competition. It can also impose penalties on those bodies if in the investigation it comes out that yes, those bodies are abusing their dominant position. Promote and sustain competition, protect the interests of the consumers, and ensure freedom of trade in the market. The Commission is also required to give opinion on competition issues on a reference received from statutory authority established under any law, and to undertake competition advocacy, create public awareness, and impart training on competition issues. So very important body. Do remember, and yes, tell me the ministry and the department under which the overall jurisdiction of CCI it lies. So very important to know. So here we come at the end of the discussion. I hope you really liked it. All the very best. Thank you.